May I develop love for the friend of Partha's son. Arjuna, who at the request of his hand friend immediately drove and placed his chariot in the middle of the Pandava and the Kaurava hosts, and planting himself there, cut short the life of the hostile warriors by his very looks. May I be blessed with devotion to the feet of the Supreme Being, who by imparting spiritual knowledge in the form of the Gita dispelled the temporary delusion of his friend, who on seeing us generals of the Kauravas forces at the when of the hostile army arrived at a distance felt disinclined to kill his own kith and kin, because he regarded it as sin, breaking his own vow not to take up arms during the Mahabharata war, to fulfill and exalt my vow of compelling him to take up arms. Shri Krishna jumped down from the car on which he had taken his seat, and like a lion that pounces upon an elephant to kill him, darted towards me with the wheel of his chariot in his hand, the earth trembling under his feet and his upper garment dropping behind him. Hit with the piercing arrow of a desperado like me, and bathed in blood, and with his armor broken, he was rushed forth to kill me. Disregarding the remonstrances of Arjuna, may that Lord Mukunda, the best hour of blessedness, be my asylum. May I in my last moments develop love for the Lord who, having taken upon himself the responsibility to protect the chariot of Vijaya Arjuna, took the charioteer's whip in one hand and held the horse's reins in another, and looked most attractive in the charming role, witnessing which at their last moment they who fell on this battlefield attained a form similar to his, or Saurya Mukti as the scripture call it, having had the signal honor of the enjoying the sight of his charming gait, graceful movements, winsome smiles and armless glances during the famous Rasa dance at Vrindavana. The cow-herdess in the mad ecstasy imitated his plays, when the Lord suddenly disappeared from their midst. Discourse 32 and 33 of Book 10, and attend identity with him for the being time in an assembly crowded with host of the sages, and for most princes during the Rasuya sacrifice performed by Yudhishthira. Shri Krishna, who attracted the eyes of them all, had the honor of being worshipped first of all before my very eyes. It is He, the soul of the universe, who has appeared before me at this moment. Having shaken off the foolish idea of diversity, I have realized that unborn Lord, who though one is severally enthroned in the heart of all embodied creatures brought forth by himself, even as the sun, though one appears as many to every eye. Sutta went on, having thus merged his soul with all the activities of his mind, speech and the visual senses in Shri Krishna, the universal soul. Bhishma expired, his breath being dissolved into the atmospheric air. Perceiving that Bhishma had entered into one individual Brahma, all those present there become silent, even as birds do at the close of the day. Then sounded kettle drums beaten by the gods and human beings. The pews among the princes shouted applause, and showers of the flowers poured from heaven. Having had the funeral and other rites performed in the respect of the deceased, O Shaunaka, descendant of Bhrigu, Yudhishthira was plunged in sorrows for some time. The sages who had assembled there exalted Shri Krishna with great delight, uttering his secret names, and then with Shri Krishna in their heart, they returned each to his own hermitage. Thereafter Yudhishthira, accompanied by Shri Krishna, returned to Hastinapura and comforted his uncle Dhritarashtra as well as his aunt Gandhari, who was known for her austerity. then permitted by his uncle and with the approval of Sri Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, the king ruled over his ancestral kingdom with righteousness. Thus ends the ninth discourse entitled Recovery of the Throne by Yudhishthira in Book 1 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Jai Shri Krishna. Ath Dashmo Adhyayah. Jai Shri Krishna. Discourse 10th. Shri Krishna departure to Dwarka. Shaunaka said, having got rid of the ruffians who sought to rob him of his lawful heritage, how did Yudhishthira, the foremost of pious rulers, proceed to rule his kingdom with his younger brothers, and what did he accomplish later, averse as he wanted to gratification of his senses? Sutta continued, having revived the race of Kuru that had been consumed by the fire of internecine feud, even as the wildfire produced by the rubbing of bamboo steams against one another consume a whole forest of bamboos, and established Yudhishthira on his having shaken off his infatuation by force of the wisdom that had dawned on him as a result of his hearing the teachings of Bhishma and the exhortation of Lord Achyuta Shri Krishna. Yudhishthira ruled over the whole earth, stretching as far as the ocean, like Indra, the lord of the submission of his younger brothers. The god of rain poured down copious showers. The earth yielded all that was desired, while cow that had large udders gladly sprinkled the stalls with milk. Rivers, seas, mountains, trees and creepers and other herbs and plants, aliment nor affliction of any kind, whether brought about by a wrathful providence, any fellow being, or by oneself in the form of bodily or mental suffering, at any time whatsoever, so long as Yudhishthira, who regarded none as his enemy, resigned as king after spending some months at Hastinapura for the consolation of his friends and relatives, as well as for the satisfaction of his sister Subhadra, wife of Arjuna. Sri Hari, Sri Krishna, as bowed to him and embraced or greeted in turn by others, those who were of the same age or younger, mounted his chariot, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, and Uttara, the daughter of King Virata, and even so Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yuyutsu, the only surviving son, Nakula, and Sahadeva, the twin-born half-brothers of Yudhishthira, Bhishmasena and Dhumya, to bear separation from the Lord, who willed in the Sranga bow. A wise man who has privilege of listening to his sweet praises being sung by others, having once had the opportunity to hear them, how then could the Pandavas, the son of Pratha, bear separation from the Lord on whom they had bestowed their mind and heart, having had the privilege not only of seeing him at close quarters, touching his person and conversing with eyes bound as they were by ties of affection to him. They all hurried to and fro the fetch parting presents for him, their heart running after him, as Sri Krishna, son of Devaki, was about to depart from the palace. The ladies who were bound to him by ties of kinship restrained their tears of affection from trickling down, anxious as they were lest any harm might come to him through such shedding of tears, which is regarded as unpropitious at the time of parting from a beloved friend of relation. Tabors, conches, kettle drums, sluts, cymbals, trumpets, dhunduris, drums, gongs and other musical instruments sounded, as also dudhumbi, another type of big drums, going upon to the top of their mansions in order to have a look of Sri Krishna. The ladies of the Kuru race rained flowers on him, greeting him with smiling look through mingled feeling of affection and bashfulness. The thick-haired Arjuna, the favorite of Sri Krishna, held over the most beloved friend his white umbrella, which was bordered with strings of pearls and had a handle of precious stones, while Uddhava and Satyaki held a pair of most wonderful chauris greeted with showers of flowers. On the way, Sri Krishna, the Lord of the Madhus, shone brilliantly. Everywhere were heard true vindication pronounced by the Brahmanas, which were unsuited to the Lord's viewed in his unqualified absolute aspect, but were quite appropriate to him in his qualified or personal form. Then began a talk which ravished the ears and hearts of all. Among the women of Hastinapura, the capital of the Lord of the Kurus, who had riveted their heart of Sri Krishna of excellent renown. Verily, he is the same eternal person who abides in his singular, undifferentiated self even during the night of universal dissolution prior to the manifestation of the three gunas, modes of Prakriti. When the individual souls retire into God, the universal spirit, and when all the forces of creation, the Mahat and its evolutes to lie dormant in the unmanifest, it was he who, with the intention of endowing with the form and the name of the Spirit, who has neither than inspired his Prakriti, which deludes the Jivas who are identical in essence with him, and which is impelled by his own energy, the time spirit is disposed to create and reveal the Vedas and other scriptures. Indeed, he is the same Supreme Spirit whose royalty in this world is perceived by seers, who have subdued their senses and fully controlled their breath, with a mind yearning for his sight and cleansed of all impurities through devotion, for it is he alone who can thoroughly cleanse our heart, which cannot be so purified by any other means such as yoga, etc. Again, O friend, he is the same Supreme Lord whose sacred stories have been sung again and again in the Vedas and other historic scriptures by seers like Maharishi Vyasa, that have expounded profound truth, and who is his own sportful ways creates, maintains and reobserves the universe all by himself without any material, and yet does not set attached to the same. Whenever kings whose intellect is clouded by tamas, ignorance, lie by unrighteousness, verily it is he who by resources to the quality of pure sattva goodness reveals in himself the divine attributes of omnipotence, etc., as well as truthfulness, righteousness, and superhuman activity, and assume various forms from age to age for the good of the world. Oh, how supremely praiseworthy is the race of Yadu that has been honored by his supreme person, the Lord of Shri, the goddess of prosperity, through his descent therein, and how supremely sacred is the forest associated with the name of the demon Madhu, the area of Raja near about the city of Mathura, that has been graced by him through his ramblings. The city of Kashosthali, Dwarka, overshadows the fame of heaven and bring merit and renown to the earth by its association, for the people of the city always behold their Lord Sri Krishna, casting his smiling looks on them whenever he gracefully moves out of his places. Surely God Almighty, who is no other than Sri Krishna, must have been thoroughly propitiated in some previous birth through fast ablutions in sacred waters, oblations to the sacred fire, etc., by the ladies whose hand has been espoused by him, in that they constantly drink, O friend, the nectar from his lips, the very thought of which mandated the women of Vraja. Oh, how blessed are his 8 principal consorts, Rukmani, who gave birth to Pradumna, Jambavati, the mother of Samba, and Nagnajeti, who bore Amba, and so on, who were carried off as prizes of valor at the assembly of suitors, after vanquishing powerful princes like Sisupala, and those others who were brought in thousands after slaying the demon Naraka, the son of goddess Earth. These women have brought sanctity to an exalted womanhood, which has not been allowed freedom and is wanting in purity, inasmuch as their lotus-eyed Lord, whoever delight their heart by his charming behaviors and loving presence, like the celestial tree of Parijata, and never moves out of their mansions even for a moment, while the women folk of his Hastinapura were uttering such words. Sri Hari Sri Krishna went his way, greeting them by his smiling looks. Apprehending danger from his foes, King Yudhishthira dispatched out of sheer affection an army consisting of all the four limbs, elephants, horses, chariots and foot soldiers, to serve as an escort of Sri Krishna, the slayer of the demon Madhu. Sri Krishna, the grandson of Surasena, now sent back the Pandavas, the descendants of Kuru, who being strongly attached to him had come very far, distressed at the thought of separation from him. He then departed from his own city Dwarka with his favorite companions Uddhava, Satyaki and others, passing through the territories of Kuru Jangala, Panchala and Surasena, Mathura, and the tract stretching along the banks of the Yamuna, as well as the Brahmavarata and Kurukshetra, the kingdoms of Matsya and Saraswata, the territory of stretching along the bank of the Saraswati, and Marudhvana. The Lord reached to the kingdom of Anartha, Gujarat, lying beyond the principalities of Sauvira and Abhira or Shaunaka, his horses being a bit exhausted by that time. In every part of the country he passed through, the people residing there honored Sri Hari, Sri Krishna with presents of various kinds. At dusk he would alight from his car and repairing to some lakes say his Sandhya prayers. Thus ends the 10th discourse entitled Sri Krishna's return to Dwarka, forming part of the story relating to the Naimisha forest in book 1 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Jai Shri Krishna. Athaya ka Dashodhyayah. Discourse 11. Jai Shri Krishna. Right royal reception of Shri Krishna at Dwarka. Suta continued, reaching his highly prosperous territory of Anarata, Shri Krishna blew his great conch Panchajanya to soothe as it were the grief of his people caused by his long absence. Being thus blown, the conch with its white bulb turned red on account of its contact with the rosy lips of the Almighty Lord, shone resplendent in his lotus palms like a loudly singing swan perched on a pair of red lotuses. Hearing that familiar blast which scared away the terror of the world, the entire population of Dwarka sallied forth to meet him, longing to see their Lord. They respectfully brought their presents to the Lord, who rejoiced in his own self and was ever perfect in his own inherent bliss, even as one would offer lights to the sun gods, the ultimate sources of light, and their countenance beaming with joy. They addressed him, the friend and the protector of all, in a voice choked with delight, even as children would speak to their father. O Lord, we ever bow down before your lotus feet, adored even by Brahma, the creator Lord Shiva, Brahma's son, and Indra, the ruler of the gods, the supreme resorts of those aspiring for the highest bliss, final beatitude, and beyond the realm of Kala, the time spirit, the supreme ruler of all created beings, be pleased to promote our happiness, O creator of the universe. For you are our mother and disinterested friend, our Lord and Father, nay, you are our true prospector and supreme deity. We have become blessed by serving you. Oh, how fortunate are we in having you as our Lord, since we behold your lovely form, the abode of all charms, and your countenance with its loving smiles and affections look a rare sight, even for the gods residing in heaven. Whenever, O Lord, with lotus eyes, you departs for Hastinapura, the capital of the Kurus, or Mathura, the capital of the Madhus, to see your friends and relations. Every moment that passes without you appears to us as long as myriad years, and we feel as miserable as eyes without the sun. O Achyuta, hearing the words of praise uttered by the people of Dwarka, the Lord, who is so fond of his devotees, entered the city, extending his grace to all through his looks. Even as the city of Bhogwati, the capital of the region of Patla, is guarded by the Nagas, a race of serpents that are capable of assuming any shape they like. The city of Dwarka was protected by the Madhus, the Bhojas, the Dasrahas, the Rahas, the Kukuras, the Andhakas, and the Vrishnis, branches of the Yadava race, who were their own equals in strength, were equalled by none. It was adorned with lotus lake that were surrounded by orchard gardens and park full of sacred trees and arbors rich in all the products of every season. The gates of the city and the palaces as well as the thoroughfares were adorned with festoons as a mark of festivity. The city was further decorated with flags and banners of various shapes and designs, the fluttering ends of which intercepted the sun here and there. Its highways, streets, bazaars and the quadrangles had been thoroughly cleaned and sprinkled with scented water and were strewn with fruits, flowers, unbroken rice and sprouts that has been rained on the Lord as something auspicious. The entrance of the every house in the city was adorned with gourds, unbroken rice, fruits and sugar cane, pitchers full of water offering incense of light. The noble-minded Vasudeva, Sri Krishna's father, and Akrura, Vasudeva's cousin, and King Ugrasena, Sri Krishna's maternal granduncle, and Sri Rama, Balrama, Sri Krishna's elder brother of marvelous prowess, and Pradyumna and Kurudsena, Rukmini's sons, and Samba, Jamvati's son, in transport of joy, quitted their beads and seats and even meal on hearing of the return of their most beloved Sri Krishna. Excited with emotions and full of joy and esteem, they placed a lordly elephant at their head to serve as a good omen, and accompanied with Brahmanas reciting benedictory hymns and equipped with articles of good omen, they mounted their chariots and sallied forth to meet the Lord. Amidst the blast of conches and trumpets and the chanting of Vedic hymns, the chief among the courtesans, whose faces looked very charming with their cheeks irradiated by splendid earrings, proceeded in their hundreds in palanquins eager to have a look at him. Even so, actors, dancers and songsters as well as pangyrists, bards and minstrels glorified the wonderful exploits of their Lord of excellent renown. The Lord on the occasion met his kinsmen and attendants as well as the citizen in the appropriate manner and showed his consideration to all, gratifying them all down to the pahriya by bowing down his head, greeting in respectful terms, clasping to the bust, pressing the hand of and greeting with smiles and enjoying looks, and granting them boons of their choice, and himself blessed by his elders, the Brahmanas and their wives, the aged folks and their others, including the Pangrides. The Almighty Lord entered the city. As Sri Krishna was passing along the main road, the women of respectful families of Dwarka went up to the top of their mansions or Shaunaka to enjoy the grand feasts of his side. The bosom of Lord Achyuta Sri Krishna is the abode of Sri the goddess of prosperity. His countenance, a cup of nectar for all eyes to drink from, his arms, the habitat of the guardians of the different worlds, whoever resides in them, his lotus-like feet, the home of the bee-like devotee. Nay, each of his limbs is an embodiment of elegance. That is why the eyes of the residents of Dwarka knew no satiety even though they beheld him every day. With the white umbrella spread over his head and a pair of cowries waving on both sides and flower raining all around, the Lord, who was clad in yellow robes and adorned with his garland of sylvan flowers, shone on the road like a cloud with the sun shining overhead, a pair of moons moving in a circle about it, stars separated all around and a rainbow and flashes of lightning illuminating it. First of all he entered the places of his parents, Devaki and Vasudeva, and gladly bowed his head to all his 7 mothers, Devaki and others, who in their turn clasped him to their bosom. As they placed their son in their lap, milk flowed from their breast even in their old age, due to their affection for him, and beside themselves with joy they bathed him in tears. He next entered his own place, unsurpassed by any other, which was occupied with all that could be desired, and had a separate mansion for each of his consorts, 16,000 and odd in number. The ladies felt overjoyed at heart to behold from a distance their lord, who had returned home after a long absence, and with bashful eyes and faces they quickly abandoned their seats as well as their thought of him. Not that he was present before them in person, as also the vows of assertivity that they had taken during the absence of their Lord. Full of infinite love, they embarrassed their Lord, first mentally, then by their sight, and lastly by their body as well through their babes. Under the pretext offering of the babes for his embrace, or in the person of the babes themselves, according to the maximum that it is the Father himself who is born in the shapes of his Son. Atma vijayate putraha. The tears which they had so far kept within the corners of their eyes out of their bashful nature now trickled down in spite of themselves or Shaunaka for most of the Bhragus, since they could no longer control their emotions, although he ever remained by their side, and that too in their private chamber. His feet appeared to them as well of freshest charm every moment. What woman would cease to love those feet, which even Shri, the goddess of fortune, cannot abandon even for a moment, though noted for her thickness, even as the wind burns the whole thicket of a bamboos by producing fire through the abrasions of the bamboo against another. So did Sri Krishna work the mutual destruction in the shape of Mahabharata war, or princes who had proved a burden to the earth since their very birth and grown very powerful in the meantime, by pitting one against another, and in a like manner brought about the extermination of their host as well, himself adhering to his vow of not taking up arms, and having thus accomplished the object of his descent on earth, he became silent. It was the same Lord who, having appeared in the mortal world in his own playful way, supported in the midst of thousands of most charming women like a worldly man, stung by their guileless and winsome smile and bashful looks that bespoke their profound love. Even Cupid, the conqueror of the world, fainted and dropped his bow. These jewels among women, however, could not disturb the serenity of his mind by their amorous gestures, finding him actively engaged like themselves, the people, ignorant as they are, look upon him who is absolutely unattached as a human being full of attachment. Herein lies the divinity of Almighty Lord, that even though abiding in Prakriti matter, he never gets tainted by the gunas, modes of Prakriti. Just as a mind that has taken refuge in him is never contaminated by the gunas of Prakriti abiding in it. Nay, those ignorant ladies, Shri Krishna concerts themselves, little knowing his greatness, look upon him as a hand-packed husband devoted to their service in the private chamber, even as the notions of aham, I-ness, conceive of God as sharing their own characteristics. Thus end the 11th discourse entitled The Entry of Shri Krishna into Dwarka, forming part of the story relating to the Naimisha forest. In Book 1 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Jai Shri Krishna. Ath Dwadasho Adhyayah, Discourse 12th, Birth of Parikshit. Jai Shri Krishna. Shaunaka said, "You have already told us that the infant in the womb of Uttara, though destroyed by the formidable Brahmastra discharged by Ashwathama, Druna's son, was brought back to life by the Lord himself. We now wish to hear about the birth and exploits of that noble soul of great wisdom to whom Shuka imparted true knowledge, how his death come about and what destiny he attained after death. Kindly narrate all this to us who are so earnest about it, if you deem fit." Sutta continued, "Freed from thirst for all enjoyments through the service of Shri Krishna, lotus feet, the right house King Yudhishthira protected his subject like a father, gratifying them in every way. He had untold riches and had performed many sacrifices and earned thereby a place in the highest world. His consort Queen Draupadi and brothers were all devoted to him. His suzerainty extended over the entire globe, while he enjoyed the sovereignty of Jambudvipa. Nay, his fame had reached as far as heaven, but could all these objects of enjoyment coveted even by the gods? O Brahmanas, bring delight to the king who had given his mind to Lord Shri Krishna, the best hour of liberation, any more than things other than food gratify a hungry soul. While being scorched by the fire of the Brahmastra, that hero Parikshit in the womb of his mother Uttara, or Shaunaka, the light of Bhragus, beheld some effulgent being of the size of a thumb, most charming in appearance and swarthy of hue, clad in yellow robes that shone like lightning and wearing a brilliant diadem of gold. He was no other than Lord of Achyuta Shri Krishna. He had 4 long and graceful arms, was adorned with pendants of refined gold, has bloodshot eyes, and held in one of his hands a mace that shone like a firebrand, even as he waved it in a circle again and again, himself revolving round the child all the time. He was quenching the fire of Brahmastra with his mace, even as the sun dispersed the fog, perceiving him by his side. The child in the womb wondered who it was having caused that fire. Lord Shri Krishna, the protector of virtue, who is infinite by nature and omnipresent too, disappeared in the womb itself, that unborn child of 10 months still looking on. Then at an hour which was favorable for the development of all noble traits, and when the stars in the ascendants were propitious, was born the child, who maintained the third of Pandu's line and was another Pandu's, as it were in bodily strength. Delighted at heart at the news of his birth, the king had benedictory hymns rected and rites connected with the birth of a child performed by holy Brahmanas like Dhaumya, Krapa and others. The king, who knew the right moment of making gift, best out at the sacred hour of the birth of Parikshit. Before the navel string is cut, gold cows, lands, villages as revenue-free grants, excellent elephants and horses and the best food grains on the Brahmanas. Pleased with the gift, the Brahmanas addressed the king, who was all humanity, as follows: O jewel of the Pauravas, descendants of King Puru, by the will of providence which cannot be balked, the stainless race of the Purus had all but died out. Yet the Almighty Lord Vishnu, Shri Krishna, in order to shower His grace on you, reserved it by saving this child. Hence he will be known in the world by the name of Vishnurata. One who has been saved by Lord Vishnu, his fame will extend far and wide, and he will undoubtedly turn out to be a great devotee of God and an exalted soul. Yudhishthira asked, will this child share the good reputation of the glorious and high-souled royal sages of his own line, O most worthy soul? The Brahmanas reply, O Yudhishthira, the son of Pratha, the grandson of yours, will protect his subjects like lies Laksku, the eldest son of Vaivastha, Manu, who presides over the present Manmantra, and will be devoted to the Brahmanas and true to his word like Sri Rama, the celebrated son of Dashratha. He will be magnificent and king of those who seeks his protection like Sibi, the king of the Usinaras, and like Bharta, the son of Dushyanta. He will extend the fame of his own people as well as of those who perform sacrifices. As a leader of Brahman, he will be a match for both the Arjunas, Sahasrabahu and his own grandfather. Nay, he will be unassailable as far and the unconquerable as the ocean. He will be heroic as a lion, the king of beasts, worthy resorting to as the Himalayas, enduring as the earth, and forbearing like parents. In even-mindedness, he will compare with Brahma, the Creator himself, while in the graciousness of disposition he will be equal to Lord Shiva, and he will be the support of all living beings like God Vishnu, the abode of Rama, the goddess of prosperity. In high-mindedness, accompanied with excellent virtue, he will follow the example of Sri Krishna. He will be generous as the king Rantideva and pious like Yayati. He will be equal to Bali in firmness and unflinching in his own devotion to Sri Krishna as Prahlada. He will perform a number of Ashwamedha sacrifices and will wait upon the aged. He will be the progenitor of a race of royal sages and chastier of those who stray from the path of virtue. Nay, he will be subdue Kali, the spirit presiding over the Kali age, in the interest of the Mother Earth as well as of righteousness, hearing out of impending death at the hands of Takshaka, a chief of Nagas. Impelled by the curse of a Brahmana's son, he will renounce all attachment and take refuge in the feet of Sri Krishna. Having ascertained the truth about the spirit from the sage of Shukadeva, the son of Vyasa, he will cast off his mortal coil, O king, on the bank of Ganga and attain the fearless state, the state of blessedness. Having thus told the king about the future of the newborn babe, the Brahmanas, who were all well versed in astrology, returned east to his own home after receiving their fee. It was their very child who was known all over the world by the name of Parikshit, because his gifted boy used to look for among those whom he saw the person whom he had perceived in his mother's womb and who always lingered in his thought. Being fostered every day by the love of his grandparents, the princess Parikshita grew up very soon. even as the orb of the moon, waxing by the degrees in a bright fortnight every day, becomes full very soon. The king now made up his mind to propitiate the Lord through the performance of a host sacrifices in the order to atone for his hostile conduct toward his own kith and kin. But since he had no money to defray the expenses of the sacrifices other than the collected as a revenue or finance, which was evidently not much, he became thoughtful, perceiving what was in his mind. His younger brother, at the instance of Achyuta, the immortal Lord Shri Krishna, fetched abundant riches that had been left in the north by King Maruta and his priests. Having thus occupied himself with all the requisites for the sacrifices, King Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, the god of righteousness, who was afraid of sin, propitiated Sri Hari by performing 3 horses sacrifices, having enabled the king to perform the sacrifices with the help of the twice born, the Brahmanas. Lord Shri Krishna, who had been invited for the occasion, stayed with him for some months for the gratification of his friends and relations. Then, with the leaves of the king and his younger brothers, as well as of Krishna, Queen Draupadi or Shaunaka, he proceeded to Dwarabati, Dwarka, accompanied by Arjuna and surrounded by the Yadush chief, Uddhava, Satyaki and others. Thus, and the 12th discourse entitled The Glory of Birth, etc. of Parikshit, forming part of the story relating to the Naimisha forest in Book 1 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Jai Shri Krishna. Athatrodasho Adhyay, Discourse 13th. Departure of Dhritarashtra and his wife Gandhari for the forest at the instance of Vidura. Jai Shri Krishna. Sutta continued, having ascertained the truth about the spirit from the sage Maitreya in the course of his pilgrimage, Vidura returned to the Hastinapura, for he had thereby come to know all that he wanted to know. Exclusive devotion of to Shri Krishna, Shri Govinda, having welled up in his heart even before he could elect replies to all the questions he had asked for solution by Maitreya, a descendants of the sage Kuru, Vidura pressed no more for a reply to the remaining questions. Seeing him their kinsman come back, O sage Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, the god of righteousness, and his younger brothers Bhima and others, son of Dharma, the god of righteousness, and his younger brothers Bhima and others, Dhritarashtra, their eldest uncle and the Vidura's eldest brother, the Yuyutsu, Dhritarashtra's only surviving son, born of a Vaishya wife, Sutta, Sanjaya, Krapa, son of Sardvana, Pratha, Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra's devoted spouse and daughter of the king of Gandhara, the modern Afghanistan, Draupadi, daughter of the king Draupada, Subhadra, Arjuna wife and Shri Krishna's younger sister, the grandmother of Parikshit, the Uttara, Abhimanyu's widow and Parikshit's mother, Krapi, Druna's widow and Krapa's younger sister, the mother of Ashwatthama, and all the male and the female relations of the late king Pandu, the father of the Yudhishthira and his brothers, as well as all the other ladies and their sons went forth in great joy to meet him, even as the organs would be roused into activity when life returned to the dead body. They all duly received him by embarrassing or greeting him and shed copious tears of love, overwhelmed as they were with anxiety caused by long separation. When he had taken his seats, the king duly paid his respect to him. When after finishing his meal and having reposed for some time he was comfortably seated, the king addressed him in the presence of all his head bad law with humanity. Yudhishthira said, "Do you remember us, brought up under your fostering care like young birds that flourish under the protective wings of their parents? How with our mother we were delivered by you from a host of calamities like poisoning and fire. How did you manage to keep your body and soul together during your peregrinations on the terrestrial globe? And what place of pilgrimage and principal sacred spot did you visit on the face of the earth? Devoted of God like you, my Lord, are not only consulted themselves, but it is they who receive the sanctity of sacred palaces that get polluted by the contact of sinners by the living presence of Lord Vishnu, the wielder of a mace in their heart. Dear uncle, or our friends and relations, the Yadavas who look upon Sri Krishna as their deity doing well in their own city Dwarka, did you happen to see or even hear of them?" Thus interrogated by the Piyush king Yudhishthira, he narrated in order all that he had known at first hand from Uddhava, omitting of course the extermination of the Yadava race. Compassionate by nature, he could not bear to see his kinsmen in distress, hence he did not break to them that unpleasant news, which was more than they could bear, for he knew that it would come to be known to the people of its own accord, adored by his kinsfolk as a veritable god. He lived comfortably at Hastinapura for some time, anxious to do good to his eldest brother Dhritarashtra and bringing delight to all. Aryama, the second of the 12 sons of Aditi, who preside over the sun successively every month, vide Srimad Bhagavata, duly carried on the duties of punishing the evil doers during the 100-year Yama. The god of justice tented the body of Shudra as Vidura under a course pronounced by the sage Mandavya. Having got back his kingdom and seen the face of a grandson capable of upholding the tradition of the family, Yudhishthira in the supreme splendor rejoiced with his younger brothers, who were as powerful as the guardians of the various worlds. In this way, time whose movements are most difficult to control passed unnoticed by them, attached as they were to their home, and had lost sight of their goal for the time being, on account of their remaining engrossed in worldly activities. Perceiving this, Vidura said to Dhritarashtra, "Look here, a terrible time has come. Let us therefore soon be away, my royal brother. That all-powerful time, the time of death, has come upon us all, which cannot be averted on any account and under any circumstances overtaken by it. A man is immediately made to part with his life, which is most dear to him, to say nothing of other things such as wealth and so on. Your uncles Bhishma and Somdata, your brothers and cousins Pandu and Bhurishrava, your relations such as your brothers-in-law Shakun and Salya, your son-in-law Jayadratha and so on, nay, your own sons Duryodhana and others have been killed. Your days are almost ended and your body is overcome with the old age. And what is worst, you are living under the roof of another king, Yudhishthira, who was your mortal enemy till yesterday. And how strong is the desire in a living being to survive, impelled by which you accept the morsels of food thrown to you by a Bhima, even like a dog. What do you expect to achieve through a life depending on the goodwill of those whose dwelling was set on a fire, to whom poison was administered, whose wedded wife was subjected to ignominy in open court, nay, whose lands and other possessions were seized, all with your conveyance? How foolish of you that you still desire to live like tattered clothes. Your age-worn body will not less leave you, however recluant you may be, to cast it off. Therefore, free from worldly attachment and shaking of all bondage, he who drops this body, which is no longer of any use to him, away from and unknown to his kith and kin. He alone is spoken of a wise, fed up with the world, either by himself or by another percepts, and with a subdued mind, and holding Sri Hari in his heart. He who leaves his home as a recluse is foremost among men. Therefore, unnoticed by our kinsmen, proceed to the earth, the Himalayan region, for the time which will come thereafter will be mostly such as would take away the virtues of men. Thus instructed by Vidura, his younger brother, the blind king Dhritarashtra, a descendant of Ajmedha, had his mind's eye opened, cutting asunder the strong ties of affection that bound him to his kinsmen. He departed his brother Vidura himself, acting as his guide, perceiving that her husband was proceeding to the Himalayas, which afforded great delight to recluse, those who have taken a vow of non-violence, even as a right house combat on the battlefield. Delight a heroic warrior, the virtuous Gandhari, the daughter of the king Sabala, too, who had taken a vow of devoted service to her lord, followed him in his journey, having said the Sandhya prayers and poured oblations into sacred fire, and having bowed to the Brahmanas and bestowed on them gifts of sesamum seeds, cows, lands and gold, King Yudhishthira, who looked upon none as his enemy, entered the apartment of his elder for his daily solutions, but failed to perceive either of his uncles or even his aunt Gandhari. With an anxious heart, he asked Sanjaya, Dhritarashtra's counselor and uncle who is blind too, "Where is my aunt, grieved at the loss of her sons, and where is my younger uncle gone, who was so kindly disposed towards us, distressed at the loss of his near and dear ones, and apprehending ill treatment from my foolish self? May it be that he has thrown himself into the Ganga along with his wife. After the death of our father King Pandu, it was our uncle who protected us all, their children, against a series of calamities, tenders of age as we were. Where have they gone from here?"